They are the biggest,
Sandy grew into a monstrous storm 1,000 miles across.
the baddest,
We saw 148 tornadoes over 2 days.
the strongest,
This is the ultimate windstorm.
the perfect mix of extreme ingredients,
And when these ingredients are there, chaos and destruction often follow.
combining to create devastating consequences.
This storm actually caused hundreds of deaths.
These are the top 10 ultimate storms. Ultimate storms come in all shapes and sizes.
Hurricanes are Mother Nature's most powerful and most magnificent storms.
Straight line winds can be incredibly destructive. You're talking about uprooting large trees, downing power lines.
The true terrible tornadoes can literally change a landscape forever.
The top 10 storms on our list are the ultimate meteorological marvels to have hit the United States in the past century.
Weather is an amazing mix of conditions that come together that can create multiple storms with all different types of high-impact weather.
These ultimate storms define each type of extreme weather and are the benchmarks by which other storms are measured.
These storms represent the power of weather.
We are still nowhere near any match for Mother Nature.
We start with one of the most infamous Atlantic storms in recent history, the 1991 nor'easter known as the Perfect Storm. The storm began when a hurricane near Bermuda encountered an extratropical low spawned from a cold front off Canada in late October.
Extratropical just basically means not tropical. Extra for outside the tropics.
This storm was called the perfect storm because of the way a tropical and a non-tropical system came together.
For 3 days, it pounded the Atlantic seaboard. The New England coast was the most seriously impacted, but storm surge and battering waves caused coastal flooding all the way from Canada to Puerto Rico.
A buoy about 265 miles to the southwest of Nova Scotia actually measured a wave of 100 feet.
In a final chapter, a small hurricane formed in the middle of the gigantic circulation.
The decision was made not to name it because by the time that the system re-intensified, it was already moving away, and they were afraid if they named it, people would think there was some kind of new danger.
By the time it was over, the storm had caused major damage in 9 states, totaling nearly $200 million and killing 12 people.
It wasn't so much that the intensity of the winds was so high, but it was the duration of the winds and the area over which those winds were blowing that created all the destruction.
The perfect storm ate a hurricane for breakfast, then turned into this huge storm that had characteristics of a subtropical cyclone, and then at the end, within the middle of the gigantic circulation, a small hurricane formed.
The perfect storm is perhaps best known for the story of the Andrea Gale, the doomed fishing vessel that disappeared with its 6-man crew during the storm. But there were other stories of heroism and sacrifice. October 30th, 1991. As the storm rages, Dave Ruvola, a search and rescue helicopter pilot with the New York Air National Guard, gets an emergency call.
We got the word from the Coast Guard that there was a Japanese sailor on a 35-foot sailboat out 260 miles out to the southeast of West Hampton Beach. His sailboat was taken on water. The mission was for us to go out there and try and recover this gentleman off his sailboat with our helicopter.
By the time they arrive on scene, it's dark and the wind and ocean are raging.
The wave heights were anywhere from 30 to 40 feet. And the winds were probably a good 40 to 50 knots at that point.
Dave worries the conditions may be too dangerous for the pararescue jumpers, known as PJs, to make the rescue.
We're concerned that if I put the PJs in, that they may not be able to make it to the ship. And now we have another rescue of trying to get my own guys.
Dave aborts the mission, drops survival supplies to the stranded fishermen, and heads back to base.
Obviously, we felt very, very bad. We went out there to get this guy, and we couldn't get him.
60 miles off Long Island, Dave rendezvous with a C-130 support plane to refuel the helicopter in midair. The attempt is unsuccessful.
The C-130 in front of us was being bounced up and down, plus or minus 100 foot.
With not enough fuel to make it back to base, a controlled ditch into high seas is the only option. Hovering above the ocean, 4 crew members jump from the helicopter.
And the wave heights were huge, anywhere from 60 to 100 feet.
Out of fuel, Dave pilots the helicopter into churning waves. Once in the ocean, he links up with flight engineer Jim Mioli. After an hour and a half, Dave and Jim spot crew member John Spillane.
We link up with John and immediately realized that John was in very, very bad shape.
The 3 men huddle in the frigid water for several hours, desperately struggling to survive. Fortunately, the co-pilot had sent out an SOS call before they ditched the chopper.
By the grace of God, the Coast Guard ship Tamaroa was within radio distance to receive that call.
Dave and 3 of his crew are rescued. Pararescue jumper Rick Smith is never found. Each October 30th, Dave and his fellow rescue team gather at a memorial on Long Island in memory of Rick Smith and other pararescue jumpers who've lost their lives.
Pararescue is a very, very strong brotherhood. We have a motto, these things we do that others may live.
In early October 2016, millions of people held their breath as Hurricane Matthew bore down on the southeast coast. For some residents, Matthew's track brought to mind a devastating hurricane that struck 62 years earlier. Number 9 on our list of top 10 ultimate storms, Hurricane Hazel.
Hazel really started off as a very typical early October hurricane. It actually formed over very warm waters down in the Caribbean near the Grenadine Islands.
It passed over western Haiti on October 11th, 1954, leaving a trail of destruction.
It's estimated that Hurricane Hazel killed 400 to perhaps as many as 1,000 people in Haiti.
After Haiti, Hazel began to re-intensify as it headed toward the east coast.
It encountered very warm Gulf Stream waters, which allowed it to strengthen into a Category 4 hurricane right as it was coming ashore.
Hazel made landfall on the border of North and South Carolina on October 15th. A Category 4 with winds estimated at more than 130 miles per hour. Hazel was both the strongest hurricane to hit the U.S. this far north and the strongest U.S. landfall so late in the hurricane season. Striking the coast during the highest lunar tide of the year, Hazel created a monster storm surge.
The storm surge in some areas was as high as 10 to 15 feet.
Almost every building along the coast from south of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to Cape Fear, North Carolina was either damaged or completely destroyed.
After the Carolinas, Hazel continued its destructive track northward through New York.
At Battery Park, the wind gusted to 113 miles per hour. That's the highest wind ever recorded within the municipal boundaries of New York City.
But Hazel wasn't done. By October 16th, after traveling more than 600 miles over land, Hazel stormed into Canada as an extratropical storm and brought another catastrophic impact.
Hazel dumped a tremendous amount of water in parts of Toronto. You had 50 bridges that were washed out there.
81 deaths were reported in Canada and 35 alone in one neighborhood of Toronto.
By the time it dissipated, it had killed 176 people in the U.S. With the lives lost in Haiti and Canada, Hazel became one of the deadlier hurricanes of the 20th century.
Some hurricanes have a primary impact from surge and waves. Some are windstorms on land, and others produce extreme rainfall. Hazel had it all and produced devastation from the Caribbean all the way to Canada.
Coming up, who switched off the sun? Monster dust storms turned day into night.
You couldn't see the hood of your car.
And later, a biker takes a ride on the wild weather side.
This huge gust of wind just hit me from the right side.
Welcome back to our top 10 ultimate storms. At number 10, a meteorological mix that created the perfect storm. At number 9, Hurricane Hazel that left a trail of destruction from the Caribbean to Canada. Now, hurricanes can be terrifying, but we know they're coming. But some storms can appear with little warning and hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean. Like number 8 on our list of ultimate storms, Black Sunday. The weather on the morning of April 14, 1935 was perfect over the Great Plains.
During this time, we saw low rainfall totals, we saw low soil, and we saw high winds, and this all conspired to produce things like black blizzards, just walls of dust.
The drought had been the end result of a fatal combination of high, dry heat, a population surge in the region, and poor farming practices.
When the farmers came, they used traditional methods of land production, which really involved plowing up the grass and making these nice open fields of soil. But the problem is nothing was there to anchor the soil.
The result after years of this is basically dust. And you need a little bit of wind to kick up that dust, and all of a sudden you have dust storms.
Dust storms were hitting the region 2 to 3 times a week. But on Black Sunday, April 14, 1935, multiple storms rolled in. Driven by a cold front, they raced down through the middle of the country.
The front itself was moving at 50 to 60 miles per hour, and the winds behind that front were incredibly strong. That's what kicked up all that dust.
The winds catapulted an estimated 300 million tons of dust thousands of feet into the atmosphere.
People could see it coming, and they knew they had to get inside. Some people didn't get in quick enough because it was moving that fast and were lost.
It hit in the late afternoon, but it darkened the sky so much it looked like it was nighttime.
Dust from the Black Blizzard smothered huge tracts of land from Oklahoma to the Texas Panhandle.
Bury things like wagons and farm equipment. So you're talking feet deep of dust.
People died from it because there was so much particulate matter that was in the air.
Dozens of other storms followed, but Black Sunday defined the Dust Bowl era. The continuing onslaught of storms instigated one of the greatest migrations in U.S. history.
These farmers didn't have anything left, so many, thousands, literally picked up and went somewhere else.
Tom Martin knows all about dust storms. 76 years after the Dust Bowl, the former mayor of Lubbock, Texas, found himself in a massive cloud of red dust that evoked Black Sunday.
It literally blocked out the sun for a few minutes. You couldn't see from the hood of your car. It blacked everything out.
Lubbock was blanketed by an 8,000 feet high band of dust that rolled across the city.
Most longtime residents of this part of the country consider that to be the worst dust storm they remember.
As National Weather Service meteorologist Justin Weaver noted in an online report, it was a disquieting reminder of the wind, dust, and damage that blanketed the region on Black Sunday.
The winds were very strong, gusting over 70 miles per hour. That did some structural damage to roofs and fences, caused some power outages. Some of the downed power lines resulted in some wildfires as well.
About 70, 80 miles northwest of here, which is a big cattle raising area. Livestock died from ingesting the dust.
It was a crazy few hours here when that occurred.
The Southwest and Great Plains aren't the only regions that get battered by wind. In October 2016, a fall storm brought gusts that topped 50 miles per hour to Portland, Oregon. But this pales in comparison to another storm that hit this area. Number 7 on our list, the 1962 Columbus Day Storm.
The Columbus Day Storm of 1962 is also known as the Big Blow for many people who lived in the area. This storm caused catastrophic damage, and unfortunately, tens of people lost their lives.
In order to get a storm this strong, this far north, up by Oregon and Washington, it takes a combination of events coming together that just doesn't happen very often.
The storm began as a typhoon named Frida, but transitioned to an extratropical cyclone as it neared the coast.
When it was a typhoon, it was getting its energy from the warm Pacific Ocean. But once it moved to the north, the energy to drive the system comes from the contrast in the cold air to the north of the jet stream and the warm air to the south. And then add in that tropical moisture, and you have the ingredients for a tremendously powerful storm. In this one, the pressure dropped to 960 millibars. That's the pressure like a Category 3 hurricane.
The storm took a track which enabled it to batter huge swaths of the Pacific Northwest.
The Oregon coast, the Washington coast, the Canadian coast near Vancouver, they were all hit by winds like they had never seen.
Winds measured in towns along the west coast were as high as 120, 130, even 138 miles per hour in gusts.
Meteorologists can only estimate the peak wind gusts because the instruments that measure the top wind speed were literally blown apart.
The force of 130 mile per hour winds is equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane. So this is incredible damage, destructive, even catastrophic damage in some spots.
The ferocious winds toppled between 11 and 15 billion board feet of timber, enough wood to build 300,000 homes, destroying more trees than were typically harvested in a year.
There were some areas that saw even 1,000-year-old trees that were blown down by the storm. The Columbus Day storm is considered the most powerful extratropical cyclone to strike the West Coast in the past century.
In today's money, it caused upwards of $2.2 billion of damage and killed nearly 50 people.
This is the ultimate West Coast windstorm because of the incredible stats. The wind speeds that came from this, the damage that was done at the coast, and unfortunately, the number of lives that were lost.
Coming up, a motorcyclist has a deadly run-in with a furious windstorm.
I don't know what happened, I told him, and he said, a tree fell on your back.
And a monster superstorm rolls over the East Coast.
This is about the worst track that a storm could take.
Welcome back to the Top 10 Ultimate Storms. At number 10, the perfect storm of 1991. Number 9, Hazel, the hurricane that caused devastation all the way from the Caribbean to Canada. Number 8, the massive dust storm known as Black Sunday that choked the Great Plains. And number 7, the Big Blow, which ravaged the Pacific Northwest in 1962. From a wild northwest windstorm, we head east. Number 6 on our list of the top 10 ultimate storms, the derecho of 2012.
To meet the criteria of being a derecho, it has to have a swath of severe damage more than 100 miles wide and more than 250 miles long. You see this wall of dark clouds approaching very rapidly, then a burst of torrential, blinding rain and severe winds.
Even if you take the longest-lived tornado out there, the derecho can double that length and sometimes even triple it.
On June 29, 2012, a derecho of historic proportions struck the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic states, blasting along the northern edge of an extreme heat wave.
This derecho began near Chicago, marched all the way across the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic coast. It had a wind gust of 91 miles per hour at Fort Wayne, Indiana.
4 million people lost power, some for more than a week. 34 people died in the heat that followed the power outages, while the derecho's wind caused the death of 13 others.
The damage is similar to what you'd see in a hurricane. Roofs blown off, trees down, massive power outages.
It went through cities, it went through towns. In terms of the wind damage, there probably isn't a bigger windstorm unless it's a huge hurricane that's accelerating upon landfall.
By June 30th, the derecho was a memory, dissipating over the Mid-Atlantic. But it's a storm motorcycle fanatic Carolina Alcalde will never forget.
It was a beautiful day. It was sunny, and I thought to myself, this is gonna be a nice, chill ride home. And as I was driving home, this huge gust of wind just hit me from the right side. I'm like, this is some crazy wind. Thank goodness I'm almost home.
Carolina will never make it that far. Stopped at a red light in Washington, D.C., the derecho rips through the trees lining the street.
I get my green light and I take off, and I wake up in the ER.
Carolina has no recollection of what happened next, but a doctor tells her she could have died.
I don't know what happened, I told him, and he said, a tree fell on your back and it severed your spinal cord. I've just become a paraplegic.
A passing motorist saw the tree crush Carolina and called 911. Almost cut in half, she spent 8 days in the ICU. Eventually moving to a rehab facility, her life changed forever.
The fact that it was a complete severance of my spinal cord meant I'm not gonna get mobility ever back again. I'm not gonna walk again. I'm not gonna run again. I'm not gonna dance again. And those things were hard to swallow.
Sometimes you wish that should happen to you, not to her. But I know she's very strong and will recover from this.
While Carolina was in the hospital, the local chapter of the Latin American Motorcycle Association raise money to help pay for her care. The accident uniting a community.
All these strangers and individuals got to know each other and make some good friendships based on the fact that we were there for Carolina.
Despite her disability, Carolina considers herself one of the lucky ones. 13 people were killed as a result of the derecho.
Had I been in a car, though, I've been told that I would have not survived.
Her journey has been long and difficult, but Carolina is determined to achieve her dream.
I was going to miss everything about being on the bike, that freedom. I was going to miss it, and I was determined to get back on the bike at some point.
I guarantee you she will ride again. The passion that that lady has is unbelievable, and we're going to do everything, move heaven and earth to make sure that she gets back on the bike when she's ready.
Coming up, 2 devastating storms ravaged the East Coast. A late-season monster.
Sandy was the biggest hurricane ever recorded.
And a killer nor'easter.
There was this gradual buildup of ocean waves and just kept eating away at the beaches.
Welcome back to Top 10 Ultimate Storms. Coming in at 10, the perfect storm of 1991. At number 9, Hurricane Hazel, ravaging all the way from the Caribbean to Canada. The number 8 spot goes to the huge 1935 dust storm known as Black Sunday, followed by number 7, the Columbus Day Big Blow of 1962, the most powerful windstorm to hit the Pacific Northwest. And at number 6, the deadly derecho windstorm of 2012. Exactly 4 months after the 2012 derecho left a path of destruction from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic states, a monster storm hammers the East Coast. Number 5 on our list, Superstorm Sandy.
Sandy is the ultimate storm because of the unusual combination of weather events that came together.
Sandy started as a classic late October storm that strengthened into a Category 3 hurricane by the time it reached Cuba.
At the same time, there was a strong non-tropical northern storm that was coming in from the west.
The jet stream dipped down and pulled Sandy to the north and merged those two. The combo storm, the hurricane and that northern nor'easter combined together and grew into a monstrous storm nearly 1,000 miles across.
Then, the superstorm made a very unusual turn towards land.
Most storms that have affected the Northeast have moved from the southwest to the northeast, but Sandy was different. It was a storm that moved to the west because it was blocked by this big dome of high pressure to the north. This is about the worst track that a storm could take. A storm moving toward the coast, funneling water into that triangle, what we call the New York Bight.
Sandy's tremendous size generated a storm surge of extreme scope and magnitude for this part of the coast, causing record flooding in parts of New Jersey and New York City.
You had subways full of water, you had parking lots full of water, lower parts of buildings. Cars were bobbing around like little rubber duckies in these corners because the wind was on shore. It was like movie sets every time you tried to make a turn in New York.
Sandy's strong winds impacted states all the way west to Wisconsin, and up to 3 feet of snow fell in the Appalachians.
What made Sandy so destructive was not just the magnitude of the winds, it was really the breadth of the wind field.
Winds over tropical storm force extended out over 500 miles from the center. We'd never seen a storm that size.
Sandy finally dissipated on November 2nd. In the United States alone, the superstorm caused $62 billion worth of damage, and at least 87 people were killed.
Most of the people that died during the storm, unfortunately, died from drowning.
Sandy did damage in Florida, in the Carolinas, through the Northeast, all the way to Maine along the coastline.
Amid such death and destruction, in the aftermath of Sandy were stories of hope. Patchogue Beach, Long Island. A FEMA crew cleaning up debris left by the storm finds a small ginger ale bottle with a note inside.
We took the note out and we read it.
The handwritten message inside reads, "Be excellent to yourself, dude."
We noticed that there was a phone number on there, so I decided to make the call.
When I come home, I have a message on the phone from this man. It says, "Yo, we found this bottle."
The bottle had been tossed into the water more than a decade earlier by Mimi Ferry's then 10-year-old daughter, Sidonie. The message was inspired by a line from her favorite movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
So many people were touched by the message and this fact that this young girl at 10 would understand that if you're excellent to yourself, you become a positive element in the world.
The thrill of finding the bottle's owner is short-lived. Brian learned Sidonie, at just 18 years of age, had died in an accident in 2010.
Once I spoke to Mimi on the phone and she told me the tragic story, I just felt like Sidonie was looking down from heaven and wanted us to find the bottle that day.
It had been 2 years since Sidonie's death, but in the aftermath of Sandy, her message finally found its way home.
My daughter is a very, very special person, and she always somehow appears where I need her.
A few months after the storm, the village of Patchogue dedicated a memorial to Sidonie. Since then, her message has given comfort to grieving parents around the world.
People who have lost their children, they've contacted me, and I think for them it makes death not so final, that messages of hope transcend death, transcend time.
And transcends Mother Nature. The last message, one of many left to Mimi by her daughter, a talented artist and writer.
A storm doesn't destroy everything. It doesn't destroy hope. It doesn't destroy memories. And that's the best part of Sidonie's message.
The widespread devastation wrought by Sandy evoked memories of another huge storm that cut a swath of destruction along the East Coast 50 years earlier. Number 4 on our list of ultimate storms, the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962, the most extreme nor'easter ever recorded.
The storm we call today the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962 was an incredible, incredible event. It did massive damage like Hurricane Sandy from Virginia all the way up through the Jersey Shore.
The Ash Wednesday storm was enormous, approximately 1,500 miles wide, and stalled in the mid-Atlantic for days.
The winds just kept blowing, high tide after high tide after high tide after high tide after high tide. And I said that 5 times because it continued through 5 tide cycles.
The sheer size of the storm helped create monster waves.
Waves are generated by what's known as fetch of wind, the area of water across which those winds are blowing. The Ash Wednesday storm had the ultimate fetch in terms of the combination of wind velocity, distance of the fetch, and duration of it.
Nor'easters are not hurricanes, but the wind and surge from this storm rivaled those of a tropical cyclone.
The wind's right at the center. We're near hurricane force, about 60, 70 miles an hour, and that just relentlessly pushed the ocean water up over the Barrier Islands at the Jersey Shore.
This part of the coastline was hit particularly hard by the storm's relentless wind and waves that came ashore on top of exceptionally high tides that were brought about by the spring equinox.
With the continuous battering, the fragile Barrier Islands just couldn't take it, and they were broken in a number of places with the land just washed away.
Floodwaters reached record levels, severely damaging or destroying thousands of homes.
About 40 people died in this 2.5-day onslaught on the coast.
The storm brought more than wind and waves. Snow fell as far south as Alabama and was 2 feet deep in the central Appalachians.
This was definitely the benchmark for nor'easters in the middle Atlantic part of the country.
The Ash Wednesday storm goes into the record books as the most destructive nor'easter in history.
When it comes to nor'easters for this part of the coast, there's no other that even comes close for the severity of the impact.
Coming up, a hurricane cuts a path of destruction through the Florida Keys.
Train tracks were ripped up, the road surface was ripped off the ground.
And a super outbreak tears through the Midwest and South.
I remember looking to the sky and just seeing this massive wall of black.
All ahead on the Top 10 Ultimate Storms. Our countdown of the Top 10 Ultimate Storms rolls on. At number 10, the perfect storm of 1991 churns up the Atlantic coast. At number 9, Hurricane Hazel. Number 8 is the giant dust storm of 1935 known as Black Sunday. At number 7, a ferocious storm that pummels the Pacific Northwest. Number 6, the ultimate derecho. The number 5 slot goes to Sandy, the hurricane which turned into a mammoth superstorm. Number 4 is the 1962 Ash Wednesday storm. Which brings us to number 3, the Labor Day hurricane that obliterated a portion of the Florida Keys in 1935. This vicious storm was born in the Bahamas, the string of islands just south of Florida.
The Labor Day hurricane of 1935 formed in just a perfect environment for explosive development. The water over the Bahamas is fairly shallow, but is extraordinarily warm.
After passing over the Bahamas, the storm very rapidly intensified into a Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 185 miles per hour.
A Category 5 hurricane is the worst of the worst.
The central pressure, an indication of a hurricane's intensity, hit a record low.
We have a verified pressure reading of 892 millibars in that storm. That's the lowest pressure ever recorded on land for any hurricane anywhere on the face of the earth.
But it wasn't just the intense winds that wreaked havoc. Storm surge of approximately 15 to 20 feet swept over the Keys in the area known today as Isla Morada.
It was the first Category 5 on record to make landfall in the United States.
Over 400 people lost their lives.
There were about 700 World War I veterans there that September working to finish the overseas highway to connect Key West with the mainland.
Some veterans were already on the mainland for the holiday weekend. A train was sent to evacuate the rest, but it didn't make it on time.
The storm surge was so powerful that it washed all of the train cars off the track. Only the incredibly heavy engine could stay upright.
The damage was mind-boggling.
The Middle Florida Keys were completely destroyed. The train tracks were ripped up, the road service was ripped off the ground, the bridges were washed out, and houses were washed offshore, sometimes with people in them.
You have to imagine it's kind of like an atomic bomb going off. The town of Isla Morada, which was right square in the middle of the storm, was completely wiped off the map.
Hurricanes can be one of the most destructive storms, but for sheer wind velocity, nothing matches the power of the most intense tornadoes. That's why the super outbreak of 1974 is number 2 on our list of ultimate storms.
There really isn't a hard and fast definition for a tornado super outbreak, but it's basically the worst tornado outbreak that you can possibly imagine.
There have only been 2 outbreaks in the United States that have been deemed super outbreaks.
One was in 2011 when we had 349 tornadoes in just a few days.
And the other one was in 1974 when we saw 148 tornadoes over 2 days.
On April 2nd into the 3rd, 1974, a strong jet stream disturbance sliced across the Rockies and out into the plains along a zone of temperature contrast.
The 1974 super outbreak was the worst case scenario of weather ingredients coming together.
This wind energy tapped into an air mass which was very warm and humid for early April and spawned an army of deadly twisters. 147 tornadoes across 13 states and 1 in Canada.
What to this day is stunning about the 1974 super outbreak is how many F4 or higher tornadoes it had.
One really notable thing about the 74 super outbreak is the size of the area that was affected.
The tornadoes in this outbreak caused more than 300 deaths and 5,000 injuries.
That day in April, the Wise family children were playing outside their Jet, Kentucky mobile home.
At first, I think we thought a train was coming, which was always a cool thing. We were looking to the sky and just seeing this massive wall of black.
With no storm shelter, the family rushes to a low-lying railroad embankment. Christina clings to an elm tree as the F4 tornado devours their home. Her sister is almost sucked into the storm.
My dad was able to reach up and grab my sister and pull her back down. He grabbed me.
And I remember hugging the dirt, screaming and crying, and then it was over.
After the tornado passes, the family finds themselves buried in the debris.
We were actually underneath our mobile home.
We got about 40 or 50 people in.
National Guard troops arrive and dig them out of the rubble. Their parents sustained serious injuries, but the family survived their brush with death.
Given the size of that tornado and the destruction and the damage that was done, it's a miracle that we walked out.
Christina's aunt also survived. At the time, she was pregnant with this woman, Stephanie Decker. 37 years later, Decker, a Wise family cousin, found herself in the midst of another outbreak. On March 2nd and 3rd, 2012, more than 70 twisters swarm over the Ohio Valley and surrounding region. One EF4 tornado strikes her home in the small town of Henryville in southern Indiana.
I noticed the wind picked up and I saw our trampoline go past my vision.
Stephanie rushes into the basement with her two small children. She tries to shield them with a comforter.
And I immediately covered the kids, tied them up, and said, "Get down, and I love you," because at that point I saw the foundation move away from the house. It was then that the tornado really kind of just took over our home, lifted it up, and slammed back down on top of us.
Stephanie's children survived unscathed, but falling debris has crushed her legs. Doctors have to amputate to save her life.
My surgeon later told me, not till recently, that really I should have died within 10 to 15 minutes.
Since surviving her second tornado outbreak, Stephanie has refused to let her disability limit her dreams.
I knew that there had to be a way to be able to help other people.
She has channeled her energies into setting up a foundation to help amputee kids participate in sports, and has become an inspiration to other amputees through motivational speaking.
Find your passion, find what makes you happy first, and then set yourself goals to get to a point where you can do all those things and find your happiness.
Coming up, we've seen 9 of the most extreme storms in U.S. history. But which one will be the ultimate storm?
This storm had it all. It had severe winds. It had a killer storm surge. It had a blizzard. It had tornadoes.
Welcome back to Top 10 Ultimate Storms. We've seen the perfect storm of 1991, the extraordinary Hurricane Hazel, the massive 1935 dust storm known as Black Sunday, and the devastating Columbus Day storm of 1962. At 6, the derecho of 2012. We also relived Superstorm Sandy that blasted the East Coast. At 4, the most powerful nor'easter in U.S. history. At 3, the most intense U.S. hurricane on record. And at number 2, the 1974 tornado super outbreak. Now we've reached number 1, the ultimate storm, the March 1993 superstorm. On March 12th, Jetstream Energy triggered a vicious cluster of thunderstorms.
This was the most extreme non-tropical Gulf of Mexico cyclone development on record. And then it continued on a path through the southeast and up through the mid-Atlantic.
On March 13th, it roared ashore.
And then it brought the storm surge that you would expect to see with a Category 1 hurricane.
In fact, it was the worst storm surge from a non-tropical cyclone in the Gulf in U.S. history. 11 tornadoes hit the state, and wind gusts topped 70 miles per hour along parts of the East Coast.
Incredibly, at the Frying Pan Shoals Light Tower, 34 miles off the North Carolina coast, a wind gust was measured at 93 miles per hour.
These winds produced widespread property and agricultural damage from Georgia to North Carolina, as all-time low-pressure records were established in several cities. At the same time, southeastern states were hit by heavy snow and winds, which produced whiteout conditions.
You're talking about winds and snowfall amounts that were feet of snow and winds 60 miles per hour. I mean, that's a big deal in North Dakota, not to mention Tennessee and North Carolina.
All told, the superstorm did about $5.5 billion worth of damage in the U.S. Its effects were felt from Cuba all the way to Canada, hitting 26 states, bringing the East Coast to a standstill.
This storm crippled travel. For the first time, every major airport on the East Coast was closed at one time or another by the storm.
One person who gets caught in the superstorm's blizzard is Danielle Swank. Just 15 years old at the time, she's on an outward-bound style camping trip in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
The first part of the trip was beautiful. Everything was bright green. It was just the beginning of spring in the mountains.
The balmy weather doesn't last. On Friday, snow begins to fall, and the group loses their way. They stop for the night and take refuge beneath makeshift shelters.
We can't sleep. We're scared. I was shivering the whole night.
The next morning, the group hikes on in deep snow. A teacher falls behind.
I stop for him, and then the rest of the group is so strung out that they don't.
Separated from the group, Danielle and the teacher spend another night in the wilderness. Before climbing into her sleeping bag, she is able to remove only one boot.
When we got up in the morning, the boot that I had gotten off, I couldn't get back on.
Missing a boot, Danielle decides to stay behind as the teacher goes for help.
And it gets darker and darker, and eventually it's night, and I realize they're not coming.
After one more night alone in the blizzard, finally, hope.
And I start to hear helicopters in the distance. The sound keeps getting louder and louder, and it comes up. I see it. It comes up right over my head, and then it goes away.
But despair quickly turns to joy.
Thankfully, 5 minutes later, it comes back, and this time it's followed by the medical helicopter.
The rescue chopper transports Danielle to the hospital. She survives, but the bitter cold has taken an awful toll.
I ended up losing half of my right foot and then having severe nerve damage on both of my feet.
Danielle is fortunate to have lived through the storm. Others were not so lucky.
At least 100 deaths were directly attributed to the storm, and maybe as many as 270 when you consider some of the indirect deaths.
This ultimate storm shows what can happen when a stunning mix of the worst weather conditions come together.
This is pretty much the ultimate winter storm because it had just about everything. It had an extreme blizzard that included the deep south, a hurricane-like storm surge, a tornado outbreak, and a derecho all in one storm.
We've reached the end of our list of the top 10 ultimate storms. But experts warn there will always be more to come, as America's atmosphere never ceases to amaze.